Most of the time, we tend, especially as couples, to look at money as something we might maybe adore. But if we started looking money as a tool, we can really go far. And out of the love that we have for each other, we demand, you tool, I need you to do this and this. Money is a tool, it will pay school fees. Money is a tool, it will do this for us. And now that is how growth starts to be. So when I say love is not enough, finances are what keeps us in a long term. Love comes in, but what keeps the relationship stronger is financial alignment. If we don't love each other, we cannot plug the financial alignment. Now that's the contradicting side of it. As much as we say love is not enough, there is also the financial alignment. If we don't love each other, we cannot do financial alignment. Everyone will be on their own. Have I touched on that? Is that good enough? Now someone else has a different perspective. Like I say, there is no one who is a monopoly of knowledge, so at least I can learn something. Anyone else who would like to maybe share a perspective on that? Alright, next slide. How we grew up, often, sometimes we grew up with our parents, we saw how they maneuvered when it came to money. But we need to understand these are different times, especially in our modern time, yeah? We have, when we look at money, we have different priorities than what they had. There is different, we come from different upbringings, we have different expectations, and if we lack communication, there can be a lot of trouble. So before I continue, there's something I really like to do here, to look at the person behind this money that we're talking about. And when we talk about the person behind money, the money that we're talking about, I'm looking at money personalities, yeah? But before we go to money personalities, let's begin with something simple. Like think about this, yeah? In your workbook, when I talk about money, what comes into your head? Just write it down without thinking too much. There's sticky notes for someone who doesn't. But I think everyone got the paper. When I talk about, when I say the word money, what comes into your mind? Is it fear? Is it stress? What comes into your mind? Is it freedom? Is it security? Is it opportunity? Just one word. Now close your eyes. For just 30 seconds. Close your eyes. I'm seeing you close your eyes. Think back the first memory you have about money as a child. Think back the first memory you have. Close your eyes. Think about the first memory you have as a child. There it is. In one sentence, yeah? Write that memory down. And so, this is now what I want us to understand. The person behind money. Because if at all we are planning to grow together, we have to understand each other. We have to understand our money personalities. We are so different. And what makes us very different? Our upbringing, number one. That is why I asked, think about money. Some people come from, some people grew up in environments where money was so scarce. And so when they think about money right now, they hoard. They just want to save everything. Because out of how we were brought up, something out of natural makes us to have that money identity. And on the other side, some people grew up in abundance. Money was not scarce. And whenever they asked for something, it was always provided. And so when that person grows up, automatically they become spenders unknowingly. Because they don't understand. It's how they grew up. And so once you realize my partner is a hoarder, and maybe the other side, my partner is a spender, at least now the communication we are talking about can start aligning. Okay? So that is the reason why we need to understand the person behind money. And I call it money identity. And Now let me look at the roles and responsibilities. There's also that question that came in. And as a couple, sometimes we come from where like we think a man is supposed to do this, the woman is supposed to do this. As a couple, we need to do this with our money. But there's a question. Every couple has, when we look at money, it's very personal. And as a couple, maybe me and Milka's family, we are very different. Me and Vivian's family, we are very different. Our roles and our how we are getting the money is very different. And so when it comes to roles, like who is supposed to do this bill needs to be done by who, it's very different and it's supposed to be very personal according to the two of you. So as a couple, you need to discuss this when you go to your money dates. Who will pay for what? How are we going to do our investments? How do we handle income? Everything. I've aligned everything and put it in the workbook, yeah? Because for those roles, really, they matter a lot. Financial red flags. Do we have red flags as a couple? We are already in, but do we have red flags? Who can tell me an example of a red flag? Yes? Well, you're saying something.
The rise in the fuel price.
Yeah. Another red flag? Yeah. Overspending.
Chewing what you can't swallow.
Chewing what you can't swallow.
Unexplained spending, for example, you may have to send to your sister some money and it becomes difficult to explain or to say that umetuma pesa. Kwa nini wanamchekelea?
So true.
Another one is also repeated habits that change that also right? Always take loans.
Yeah. The repeated habits. So, yes.
I think another big one is when I want to live like you and I'm not you.
Coping lifestyle. So everything, those are some of the red flags that we go. But if I can outline, number one, hidden debts. Hidden debts. Those are one of the major red flags as couples. The second one is secret spending. Nimetumia sistangu pesa, sitaki kusema, that's secret spending. Nimeenda town. I know we buy electrics, shoes, umezirusha kwa group. Hautaki kusema. Umeenda umenunua handbag, unakuja una split your pesa. Ulipa hauna. I think we also cheap. Yes, we are there. The other one is financial control. One person is earning more than the other person, but they will often find themselves controlling everything, every major money decision. They're the ones to say, just simply because they feel like they are earning more than the other person. And sometimes it goes in deep. You might find maybe one person took career break. So they are maybe house husbands or they are housewives. And so what happens? These are the person who is now taking the financial muscle, tend to control everything, and making the other person feeling insignificant. That is also another big red flag. And finally, the fourth one is lifestyle inflation. Basically, living beyond your means or copying the other couple. Oh, when you find you just copy them. But when it comes to also living beyond your means, anytime salary increase, and I like talking about this, yeah, things, but let me talk about it. How we find ourselves living beyond our means, sometimes sikupenda. You know you're earning 100,000. That is your gross income. If you have a business, maybe that is your gross profit. But in reality, you haven't looked at the deductions. And your take home before we pay one time, how many two time I don't know. Before we pay the 30, the everything, the housing, take home probably comes to around 70,000. In our head, unaandiki pesa ngapi? Mimi wana 100,000. Biashara inafanya aje? Tunafanya poa, gross profit. Profit yangu ilikuwa 100,000. This person hasn't factored in the deductions of the expenses of the business. They're not working with the net profit. And as humans, what happens? Our mind automatically fixes that amount that you keep on talking often. And we are here sometimes, even we have told our spouses, anakuuliza una pesa ngapi? Automatically unamwambia pesa yenye una ile yake gross. What happens? Si akili yako inakwambia kabisa maana na 100,000. Mimi nitaishi nyumba ya 20,000 kweli. You move automatically to nyumba ya 30,000. But we are, in our mind, we are working with the growth. So what happens? Along the way, the deficit starts creeping in. And that is now how we find ourselves getting into debt. So that the year 20,000 to 30,000, the deficit, we are not able to know why am I having a deficit. Yet, it's that fixed. So I need you to look at and analyze, by the way, which is the amount that I work with. Natumianga gross or net. That is now you answer to yourself. And if you use gross and you are told the spouse gross, they might be seeing huyu akona pesa nyingi, kwa nini ananikanganyanga ati hana pesa? Na kabisa ni innocent. So kama mliambiana hivyo, leo msiende leo kuongelea pesa. We will set a specific date. And now that date is when now we disclose those things, yeah? And the final one is avoiding money conversation. I saw a question, how can my partner, they avoid having money conversations? Like I said, my partner is an avoider. And I have struggled here to at least bring him closer so that we can have those conversations. So how do you start? Simple, don't force it. You see, when you're in your happiest moment, that is the time. What's your thinking? What do you think? And out of that, the happiest moments, that is the time now you start having those conversations. And out of that, honestly, after a year, even now we start reciprocating with those conversations. Like I said, ladies, together. When I give na mkimwona kwa barabara msi. Please don't judge us. Like I said, we are spreading financial literacy because of our many money mistakes. And that is why he's also the director. Many money mistakes that we have done. I remember when we were talking about emergency fund. I struggled. I remember we need an emergency fund. We need an emergency fund. I'll explain what an emergency fund is, but I think I can bring it now because of time. An emergency fund simply is putting aside money just in case of any popping up emergencies that might pop. And many times you will hear coaches, financial advisors saying, oh, you have to put 3 times, or you have to put 6 times of your expenses. But for me, I always say this, you have to put the amount you think is good enough. But rule, if you're both in businesses, you have to put 12 months of all operational expenses for the business and of all operational your expenses for your house. Why? Because businesses sometimes markets can be a risky place. It can fluctuate. But if you are both employed, decide on the value. You can take both of your gross incomes. You can take just the expenses and put aside maybe 6 months, just in case. And most of the emergency fund, we use it because of the unknown. One person might lose a job before moving to another job. At least you have something to go back. So I struggled. Hey Daniel, situation emergency fund. I think for him, like I think he's a risk taker. Any money, he could show up for investment. But finally we achieved. We achieved. Out of it, when we are in a happy moment, then we need to put that emergency fund. We need it. So even if for his side or for her side, they are not good money communicators, bring it often. And at one point or one way or another, they will give in and we start doing it together. And I'm telling you, and I'm not lying, after he started seeing how the growth is doing, by the way, attitude, zinaanzanga sasa, stop up. And that is how your partner will also be. They are difficult right now, but find a way. When we talk about budgeting, most people think like budgeting is supposed to be very restrictive. How many of us do budgeting? How many of us do budgeting? And when I talk about budgeting, is you basically know most of your money where it goes. And you have a good structure that you follow. So that's all about budgeting. But most of us sometimes fear budgeting. Why? Especially on the men's side. Most ladies, we are the ones who do budgeting. But ukimwambia mketi chini mfanye budgeting, sometimes it becomes difficult. So let's not think about budgeting as something that is very restrictive. But out of budgeting is where we get the structure. And if I can I don't want to talk much about budgeting because it's information that is out there on how you need to do budgeting, you need to keep on doing this. But if I look at where most people, or rather where most as couples, where we struggle when it comes to budgeting, number one is putting unrealistic budgets. Putting unrealistic budgets. Do you do that? Acha nimweke ni hype salon yangu. Acha ni hype. Nani namlipanga 10,000 lakini acha nimwambie namlipanga 12,000. You see those small putting unrealistic budgets? That is one of the major mistakes that we do when it comes to budgeting. The second one is emotional spending. Maybe your employer stressed you, and out of that you just go and spend. We were supposed to go do shopping. Maybe you were doing shopping, you had a good list and all that, but out of nowhere you just find yourself, acha niongezee, just because you are a bit stressed. And that one messes our budgets. The third one is lack of visibility. Yes, you're doing budgeting, but when are you doing budgeting? Are you doing budgeting when money comes in? Because the biggest mistake that we often do when it comes to budgeting is pesa ya salo imeingia leo, kesho ndio unafanya budgeting. That needs to stop. You remember about the money meeting that I talked about? You need to do those money meetings at least a week prior or 2 weeks prior before salary comes in. You need to give your money direction for next month 2 weeks prior to getting that income. Because you will have known salary inakuja hivi. Tukana maybe something that we need to do. You already now start setting that money and putting that tool to work with everything that you want. Lakini for those who are doing ati pesa ndio imeingia, and this is how you do budgeting, and we find ourselves there. Nimelipa rent, nimelipa all, that's not doing budgeting. Budgeting is done prior. And I want all of us to do it prior. Okay? Am I speaking? So that you can have visibility. The fourth one is no shared priorities. Remember the goals that we have written? You need to understand which one do we prioritize. I know both of you maybe have different goals, but you need to define and understand ni gani tutaanza nayo. Hamwezi anza na zote. You need to tick this one we have achieved, and now the second one is this one. Or if it needs to go together, how do we prioritize? Which one do we start with? Tutapea hii maybe 5,000. Hii ingine hatutailet down, tutaiwekea maybe 2,000. But hii yenye tunataka kuachieve haraka tunaipea more priority. The other mistake, inconsistency. Hii month umefanya budgeting, next month haufanyi budgeting. Every month we need to be very consistent, yeah? I will talk about how a budget should look like. Okay, we have the needs. Needs are the essential things for those people who, you need to know all my needs. These are the number. You need to know all your wants. Wants are these enjoyment that we need. going out, eating out. I know budgeting sometimes can be boring, but it needs to be done. And then we need to have investments and savings. This is the number that we will pay between that. And finally, debt. And if you don't have any debt, all that money should be channeled to your investment and savings accounts. And some people ask me, how many percentages should we put? I know there is a rule in finance, put 50% in your needs, put 30% in your wants, and put 20% in your investments. But for me, take it from me, money is so personal. Needs za kwangu si the same as za wenye wananiandikia. Yes, it's a good guidance. But you need to sit down and analyze how much of our needs are actually do we need to source. Now write that percentage down. I think in the workbook is there. And how much of our wants are there? Salon is wants. Do you agree with me? Salon is a want. Barber shop is a want. It's not a need. Unaweza jinoa. Hata mimi nikimoa hii, utapata wonders. So that one is part of the want. Going out on Sunday fun day. Lakini church iko poa, you see your church on Sunday fun day. Taking kids, those are your wants. As a family, sit down and write that number. And that number is so important because we have to enjoy life as much as we are talking about money. And then investment and saving. Actually, that is the first thing that you need to put. Every month, no matter how finances look like, you have to have at least maybe 5%, 10%, 20%, even sometimes 30% going to your investment and savings account. And finally, if you have debt, you'd rather reduce your wants and we sort out that debt. Okay? So that is how basically you structure budgeting. Then there's the most, as a couple, because we're talking as couples, there is this question that came: how should we divide our money? Or rather, how should we structure our money? There are some couples, I'll talk about 3 ways couples do, and maybe you will find out where you are. One, some couples do fully joint. Pesa yangu inaingia, pesa yake inaingia, yote inaingia kwa kikapu moja. Is it advisable? Maybe it's working for them, I don't know. But that one needs a lot of trust. It needs a lot of openness. And zikisha ingia kwa hii kikapu moja, now is when we start spreading it out. We pay our responsibilities, we pay school fees, we pay for that. There are people who do that, right? And if you're here and it's really working for you, continue doing this. Because in some point, that is one of... Continue doing that. I will recommend what I think is best. The second one is fully separate. There are those who couples, kona pesa yako, mimi kona pesa yangu. Is it really recommended? As a couple that we are living together? No. When I talk kona pesa yako, kona pesa yangu, this is where, and don't get me wrong, yeah? Tumeshaambiana wewe unalipa rent, unalipa school fees. Mimi nanunua food na sort out health. That's it. Everything else is kept separate. They don't invest together. Mimi najinvestia, wewe unajinvestia. That is, some couples do that. And somehow, we might be there. We might be there. But if at all we're in this together and it's a partnership and we are growing together, I come to the third one. Hybrid. Hybrid model. It combines the joint and it combines the separate. And why do I... You can take it, you can choose which one works for you, yeah? Why do I recommend on the hybrid? Hybrid works like this, yeah? Money comes in. We have the joint account. Well, you can decide if all the money can come in that joint account. But you have automated. A certain percent will go to your individual account and a certain percent will go to the other person's account. Then whatever remains, the money that is here now will be used to pay for both our expenses. We will do investment together with us. Why do I recommend on the hybrid? Because as before we became couples, we were individuals. And as individuals, we have our own needs. And that is now the space where that is the amount of money you can do whatever you want without feeling guilty. And it's really recommended because we were individuals. There's no way putting everything together, you have at least to give me something to feel like sija work so much na unanirestrictia pesa yangu. Hiyo ndo pesa yenye ukitaka kumsurprise ka date. Si hapa ndo unatoa. So that is the recommended one that I will use. But like I said, continue using the method that has been working.